who at that time was God. Well, it takes a lot of cojones, but also it takes a lot of wit. Okay, and when don't worry about the tweeting because nobody understood it anyway. So it's not going to be tweeted. But we are going to use it, and that's what matters. Now, in the realm of crazy ideas, I wanted to invite Amol Sarva, who has been sharing with me an idea that I never heard him explain in public. So I thought this could be a chance for Amol, who was one of the founders of Virgin Mobile in the United States and who's helped us at Fund and tremendous deal in a new product that we're developing and I hope to announce because I am learning from Marco and I'm keeping things more secret. I think Amol has a product that somehow makes you better off, I think, but I would love to hear how you present this in public, Amol.
I'm curious myself, Martin. Thank you. I haven't presented it in public, so we'll find out. But I'm making a product. The first time I used it, I saw the light, very literally. It's a product that's based on something that was discovered in the early days of electricity. If you may remember, the Italians were prominent. In 1804, Volta wrote a paper where he had discovered, they were very excited when they discovered electricity, and one of the things they were excited about is that the body uses electricity to work. There's electricity in your body. And I guess they had more important things to do when they discovered electricity, like making solar cells and the things we work on with electricity now. But in the early days, they were so creative and they were so fascinated when they discovered electricity in the body. Volta would do demonstrations in public where he took cadavers, dead people, and put electricity in the bodies and made them dance. And he wrote a paper about two women who were very sad. They were depressed with melancholia, and he cured them by applying electricity to their body. And in the 100 years, 150 years since then until 1960, 1970, most people did not touch this. It sounds scary. I'm sure it sounds scary to you to have your depression cured with electricity. But in the 60s and in the 70s, you may remember this, this movie. It made it very popular. These treatments using electricity, electroshock therapy, using very high levels of current, became more common in medicine and were some of the early applications of something called neurostimulation. If you apply a high level of current to your brain, you make a seizure. A seizure is a bad thing usually. And in things we don't understand, like a television that's not working right, you might just hit it and sometimes it works. They found in some applications, limited applications, depression, epilepsy, applying some electricity in this powerful but very crude way had some healthy effect, something helpful. And in the 40 years since then, quite a number of people have been experimenting with different techniques using electricity on the brain. So there's the electroshock therapy that any doctor will tell you is safe, commonly used. There are some techniques with magnets, with ultrasound waves. There are some unusual things that you may or may not have heard about. And Fabrice, I was so happy that he mentioned some of the sensor technologies with the brain. With the sensor technologies, people are building startups now and elite technology that listens to the electricity in your brain. By listening in the brain, they find what picture you're seeing, some signals that you can control yourself and make a ball float in the air, control a robotic arm, many things. But the technologies that I'm talking about that Volta had started experimenting with go the other direction. They do stimulation to your brain. When I was a graduate student 15 years ago, I was studying cognitive science. I was a philosopher, and I was taking some neurobiology and psychology classes and learning about how the brain actually works so I could write papers about it. And I learned about a technology from a crazy Australian guy named Alan Snyder at the University of New South Wales in the physics department, and the article was in Wired. It was not a science article. It was just a blog post or something in Wired. And this guy said he had a hat that could take an ordinary person with ordinary skills with a pencil and turn them into Walt Disney. You would walk in, you put on this hat, and suddenly you're drawing amazing cartoons. And something like that with music too. You sit at a piano and you're playing songs in minutes. And it sounded insane. It sounded amazing. I asked my colleagues, I had some of the best neuroscientists in the world just standing around. I said, hey, does this thing work? What do you guys think? And they told me. They said, it's complete bullshit, forget about it. How can a hat go into your brain and do anything? It was hard to forget about it. But mostly I ignored it, and I've been working in telco, which is how I know Martin. So in some ways it's lucky that I've been working in telco, but telco is a terrible thing. At the end of last year, I found out, oh, maybe I don't have to work in telco anymore. I was very lucky. Something happened in my company that was really good. And I thought, well, you know, what's the most amazing thing I've ever heard of? What are the most incredible things that I could maybe be involved with that really will change the whole world one day? And I remembered this thing. And I called up some friends in neuroscience and asked them to come and talk about what has been happening lately. And I did some reading and all that. And I found out that this crazy guy from the Wired article had just published a paper last May in a real journal, Neuroscience Letters, peer-reviewed, really elite thing. And in this paper, he had taken 40 people in his laboratory in Australia, and he had asked them to come in, and he had given them a puzzle. It's a famous puzzle in the US, and if I had a projector or something, I'd show you this puzzle. Later, you come and find me. I'll give you the puzzle. This puzzle, when you're a kid in the US, always you find some aunt or uncle who comes to you and says, hey, try this puzzle. Draw out these lines. And you struggle and you struggle and struggle and you never solve it, and then the aunt tells you and they feel very smart and the adults laugh and they go away. Well, in Australia, it's not so common, this puzzle. So when you meet people in Australia that haven't seen the puzzle, he had 40 people come and he made sure they didn't know the puzzle. And he gave 20 of them the puzzle, put a fake hat on them, let them do some stuff and asked them to solve it, gave them a certain amount of time to solve it. And in fact, this puzzle is a famous puzzle in psychology. It's 100 years old. It's used to see if you're doing the experiment right. Because if you do the experiment right, no one solves the puzzle. And he did the puzzle the right way, no one solved it. 20 people took the puzzle, nobody solved it. The other 20 people he put his hat on, and he did a specific type of brain stimulation, where a very weak current is put on a few spots in the head. Like a hearing aid, very weak current, and it's just put on the skin. Completely simple. And on these other 20 people, he did the stimulation, he gave them the puzzle, and in 5 minutes, 40% of them solved it. The paper he wrote had the title, Using Neurostimulation to Solve Intrinsically Difficult Problems. And if you read a paper like that in Neuroscience Letters, and you look at the gadget, and you've made smartphones and all kinds of crazy technology like that, I mean, how can you not just start a company to make this technology with ultra-cheap electronics that could make the world smarter, that can solve intrinsically difficult problems? And so this is the company I've been working on the last 6 months. So I made the gadget, I put on the gadget, and the first time I did it, I saw the light. I literally was blinded by electricity going through my visual nerve. I couldn't see anything. I didn't do it the right way. I found that out later. I shouldn't have plugged it into the wall. I should have used a battery. I also found out that apparently it's safe. I didn't die. Then I read some papers and found out, yes, in fact, it's safe. In fact, it was studied to some great extent. And so we've been building trials with this thing, and as amazing and exciting as it is to build a technology that takes your highest faculty, the most important power we have as human beings, and makes it more powerful, that might make race car drivers win, or mathematicians solve theorems, as amazing as that is, there is an extremely practical, extremely humane function for this business. Because for us, we're healthy, we're very lucky, our minds work well. There are some people whose minds do not work well. They've had strokes, they have Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. And this technology, very simply, without invasion and without brain surgery, without anything, can elevate their cognitive function. And just this last week, before I came to Spain, we completed our first trial in New York with a dozen healthy people, where we made them do the strength rehabilitation tests. There are these tests where you put beans in a can and do all this stuff and you time it. And with our gadget, these people, their function was improved by 30%, which is a standard deviation of improvement. It's not normal. You can't just snap your fingers and get so much better. But you can wear the Halo device and get this much better. It improves your mind. I mean, in our home laboratory, in our unscientific, somewhat scientific setting, we're able to create this effect. And so this is the technology that I'm making.